The Ready, Set, Grow podcast is sponsored by Ag Expert, software designed for Canadian agriculture. Visit them today at agexpert.ca.
Hello, welcome to the Ready, Set, Grow podcast, where we like to showcase startup and early stage companies, as well as visit with innovators in the agriculture and food industry. My name is Michael with RH Accelerator, and today we're here with Joe Dales, co-founder at RH Accelerator, and Todd Ormann, Global Director, Strategic Initiatives and Alliances at TELUS Agriculture. Todd, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for inviting me.
Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Yeah, I would call myself an Aggie that's tended to be in a lot of change management type of jobs and roles. So I've had a career of moving into the new areas of agriculture and helping drive that. So historically, I started out on a farm. I was a farmer. I grew up in Foremost, Alberta, rented farmland when I was 19 and put myself through school. Got a master's in agricultural economics from the University of Guelph, and then went on to industry. And started out in Cyanide. That's where I met Mr. Dales. He was a product manager who gave me lots of work as a sales rep out in the field, and did that for a few years. And but of course, in the industry of ag, as you know, it's been one of constant change, right? I think within 4 months of my time at Cyanide, we went through a merger with Aerith Wyeth back then. And ever since then, I've been doing nothing but seeing change in ag. So I started out in Cyanamid, and then I had followed a boss into United Grain Growers, a gentleman by the name of Jeff Giles. And the interesting thing there is back in those days, we had all those small country elevators, and the job there was honestly to restructure. So I got involved with restructuring country elevators, had the fun job, honestly, of closing some of them down, building out some of the larger ones, and moved across Western Canada with that. In fact, I think in my first 10 years of my career, I moved 7 times in 4 provinces. I ended up in Olds, Alberta, and restructured the region. And then I was asked to move back east, and my wife said, no, we only move west. So I stayed in Olds, Alberta, and began working for a company called Ad Farm. I had some nice clients like Dow AgriSciences and Agrion, launched Frontline, launched ESN for Agrion, and enjoyed that, but always wanted to be the client. So I got headhunted to Syngenta. I spent some time at Syngenta, and this is where I really got into data. So back in the day, there was a lot of mass marketing. But Syngenta had a very strong customer planning approach, and so they looked at utilizing data. And I had this boss by the name of Norm Dreger, and Norm had this spreadsheet of customers. And I remember we handed it to our data provider, and we thought we were done our job with data, that we had a database and we were all done. About 6 years later, we actually had program management, the ability to do social media, contact centers, and the whole 9 yard. And that's what really got me down that path. So then I spent about 9 years at Syngenta doing that kind of stuff. Ended up as a portfolio manager for North America, and then was recruited into UFA. I ran their ag division for about 3 years, and then back from my days as the grain growers, a gentleman by the name of Wade Barnes invited me to come into Farmer's Edge. Patrick Crampton was a boss of mine at Syngenta. He was there as well, joined them. Spent a couple years building out the first farm command that went global. Lived my life on an airplane. Got to see Australia, almost every field you can imagine in the Midwest, Dodge, Kansas, you name it. I was with Farmer's Edge. It was a very interesting time. But I, again, lived on an airplane. And had an opportunity after that. I was involved in some of the super cluster work with Farmer's Edge. got talking to TELUS, and TELUS told me this story that they wanted to build an ag division. Thought that's kind of crazy, a telco getting into agriculture, but they had a track record. They had a track record doing similar things in the area of health and in the area of international. So I joined TELUS, and here I am. I was employee number 3 with TELUS Agriculture. We now have 1,300 employees scattered over 50 different countries. So been busy.
That's exciting, Todd. Really, really quite a story. You've really pushed yourself into positions where you've had to innovate and bring innovation to the market. So congratulate you on that. Always been impressed with what you're working on. Can you give us a quick snapshot of TELUS? For people that they see it them as a phone company. Often we've had TELUS phones and stuff, and then talk a little bit more about what you've done with TELUS Ag getting started and a little bit of that story. So our audience is farmers and agribusiness, and I think they'll find that really fascinating how you popped this thing up relatively quickly.
Yeah, to some it looks relatively quickly, but it was a lot of work, and a lot of the infrastructure was already there. So when I joined TELUS, everyone talks about Darren. So Darren is the CEO of TELUS. He's been, I think, the CEO for 17 or 20 years. They talked about him like he's the guy next to you in the cubicle. So everyone kept talking about Darren. I asked who Darren was, and they all looked at me like, "What do you mean you don't know who Darren is?" Mm-hmm. But Darren has a very significant strategy, and a lot of that strategy kind of focuses around social capitalism. So Darren would see TELUS as a telco today, but probably a little bit more of a tech company in the future. But we don't go after developing verticals that are going to go after a Microsoft or a Google. We look at things that have social purpose. And so our diversification strategy has been looking at things like health and now agriculture. If you look at some of our competitors, they've invested in things like Blue Jays or Sportsnet or media assets. That's not where TELUS goes. Again, they look at these tech verticals. So TELUS Ag follows that piece. And some of the core functionality that TELUS has in it is ventures and the ability to acquire companies. And this is what they did to set up TELUS Health. There was about 22 acquisitions over a 12-year period. And the same thing with TELUS International, which is actually the largest people division in TELUS. I think there's 55,000 plus people, and they're in the U.S., Eastern Europe, Western Europe, Central America, and Asia. And so to that end, we leverage that infrastructure and that thinking to start looking at TELUS Ag. Now, TELUS Ag, just to give you guys a bit of background too, the nice thing about TELUS is it went into areas like health. It was a nice neutral player, right? It wasn't a pharmaceutical company. It wasn't a clinic. It was an enabler of data. It helped connect that record. It's the same thing that they started looking at when we got into agriculture. It was really more about how do we connect this disparate databases and how do we connect an ecosystem up? Because we do have that belief that there's a need to start understanding what happens on the farm upstream to what happens with the food. And that demand is definitely there, but it's going to take a significant effort to basically connect those. And it's not going to be a single platform. It's going to be a number of investments and acquisitions and partnerships in various use cases throughout that value chain to connect that. And that is what we did on the health side.
Todd, can you take us through a bit about your growth through acquisition strategy, and then what types of companies are you looking at acquiring?
Well, it's a combination of acquisition and investment and partnership. So it's a little bit of both. And so when we look at the ecosystem, we kind of at a very high level looked at kind of 3 general buckets: farm and ranch, agri-food, and agribusiness. I mean, on the farm, you are going to need data sets and systems that basically drive production, right? So that helps you grow the crop or more efficiently raise an animal. Those are unique data systems and structures that do that. Agribusiness also utilizes similar data sets, but they utilize it more for securing commodities or for actually selling to the farm. And so there you could have everything from program management to marketing type of materials, different than, a variable rate program that would go with the growers. And then at the agri-food side, what you find is the data systems start moving from looking at the farm to looking at the consumer. Now you're starting to track from the processor on, and you're starting to measure what's actually at the plate or on the shelf. So those are the various data systems there. So to that end, we looked at trying to find companies of size and scale that we could invest and acquire in that. And then to make that work, we also needed a data exchange, because you're going to see different data sets in each of those things that come through. And to that end, we've also invested in that front and acquired companies that support that. Now, the other thing I should note is that TELUS Ag has a fairly significant neutrality. Now, it is somewhat unique and beneficial that TELUS has not been a chemical company or a seed company or a grain company, right? So that non-bias allows us to honestly play throughout that value chain, to connect that value chain. So we don't sell iron, we don't sell chemistry, we don't sell seed, but we work with those kind of companies as partners, and we work with the farmer to connect that. So that's the overall strategic intent. And when we started looking at these investments and acquisitions, and there's a little bit of a telco mentality there too, right? When you start thinking about the telco world, not everybody builds a tower next to each other. You share the towers and you beat each other up at the consumer level. That's the same thing here when you start looking at TELUS Ag.
Yeah, it's terrific. So 1,300 employees, where are they located? Where do you have operations?
So we actually do have business in 50 different countries, but to be candid, Joe, I don't know if this is the right way to describe it. We're a little Anglo-Saxon. Our largest business alignment is really in the UK, US, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. But we do have footholds in China, footholds in South America, footholds in Australia. Well, actually, from the food side, a fairly significant foothold in Australia as well. So it is very, very broad. And it really depends where our partners are. I think today we have roughly about 106 million acres in our databases, about 2,200 different clients, 15 of the top 20 food brands, 40% of the Canadian cattle herd, and about 13% of the North American cattle herd in our database today.
Wow, it's really, really pretty impressive. I'm really excited that we have another new major supplier that is good at technology. We know that there's going to be a lot of heavy lifting required. You guys have a good footprint with the cellular infrastructure in Canada anyways. And, the smartphone is such an enabler for farmers, and probably arguably one of their most important implements. If you try to take it away from, my brother, for instance, it probably wouldn't work, right? You'd be, no, I need my phone. No, this is really exciting. Where are you going with this? Is this, do you want to continue to grow, or are you going to keep expanding, more products, more services? What does TELUS Ag look like in 5 years in your mind, if you can share that with us?
Yeah, I mean, we started off, where we could get a decent footprint, right? So we started off very much into row crops, and we started off also in beef, because those are also some of the expertise that we had on the team. Mm-hmm. And so that's where we have started. But I do see us continuing to fill in the gap. So today, it's not like we are at that stage where, I can go to a grocery store at Sobeys and, link that to my brother's farm in Foremost, Alberta. We're not there yet, right? So there still is some gaps to fill in with the overall ecosystem as we start looking at those complementary pieces to the bases we have in place. And then the other thing is we will start looking at other sectors. So again, we're very strong on row crops. One of our acquisitions, Agrian, has a really solid footprint in California. They've got about 70% of the acres there. And they do work a lot with high value crops and some of the regulatory environments. But I do see us now expanding into other commodities, and also maybe looking at some of those other new things that are coming down the pipe that may be, that will be technology enabled. So vertical farming, I can see some of the things we're looking at. And then I think the other thing that we will consider a lot in is how do we expand our footprint in sustainability? Today, we have Unilever as a client that uses the Muddy Boots piece. Our feedlot team does carbon credits in that marketplace. But you can see lots of opportunities for us to think through how we expand that area as well.
Yeah, that looks like, sounds like a great plan moving forward. I know you get to look at a lot of companies in the agriculture space. Are there any sort of trends that you see moving forward that will, make sort of some transformational changes in the agriculture sector?
There's a couple things there. I think, to be candid, this is just my own personal view. There's a lot of good technology out there, but there was still probably a lack of understanding of how to go to market. So I don't know how many companies we had talked to that you could see had great functionality, but really did not know how to leverage that technology with the farm or with the channel. And on top of that, the farm and the channel, even though they got lots of technology in there, still is learning how to use and adapt it, right? So I do think over time, we are starting, and even the COVID piece, because of just like the Zoom piece, you will see much more understanding of how to utilize and leverage those. And those will become much more natural. So I do expect the channels to mature. I do expect go-to-market approaches to mature. Some of the things in the marketplace have been tried, but you know what? They're just not there. Like it or not, ag is not the urban world. It's not the 15-year-old kid on Facebook, right? We have a 52-year-old guy that looks a lot like me with thicker and fatter thumbs that is using this technology. So I do see a little bit more rethink about how we support the farm and how we leverage technology going forward. On top of that, I do expect to see some consolidation. I mean, there's no doubt. I think the first round of technology has been out there, and we are starting to see some of those come together. I mean, there's always been a number of announcements about cooperation and collaboration on that side. And then finally, the other thing I do think is we will see more collaboration on data. Because I think a lot of people are understanding that one of the real big challenges here is that the technology is not connected. So to that end, some of the bigger players are going to start working together to look at how we can normalize data and start thinking about how we can move data across this ecosystem.
Yeah, great points. Great points, Todd. You've had your career, basically your whole life in agriculture. We're going to need to draw in talent from the outside, especially engineers and people that haven't been on farms and so on. What would you say about, why is agriculture and food such a great career path for the next, for your career?
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack on that, right? I don't know if I should say this in public, but my boss is not an Aggie. It's amazing how smart that guy is. He's actually figured a lot of this stuff out. As an Aggie, it took me working for TELUS to kind of get that good sense that, there is going to be a lot of people moving in to this space that we're just not used to, right? I mean, you and I both know that there's just not a lot of kids left on the farm. Mm-hmm. And you are going to see a more urban piece come into the world of ag. And I also find it fascinating by working at TELUS, like ag is cool. Like a lot of people really like the thought of agriculture and the idea that you're feeding people. Mm-hmm. So we get a lot of interest in that piece that what you're doing is for social good. And I think that, as growing up in ag, sometimes you take that for granted. That it's just what you've done all your life. But when you listen to people and you talk to people that have not been in agriculture, that resonates very significantly. And so I think that is one of the cool factors about agriculture and why you want to be in it, because you know you're doing something that has a social significance. And today, that's a big deal. And compared to, when you and I first met back in the days of Cyanamid,
Mm-hmm.
I've never seen this much interest in food coming from the urban population. And so that trend I can only see increasing. And that itself will drive a lot of change and a lot of newness into the world of ag.
Yeah, and I agree. And I think the amount of innovation that can help farmers, that's what motivates me, is trying to bring new tools, new solutions to help them, save $1 or make $1. And when you boil it all down, we're helping feed the world. So it's still pretty easy to get motivated every day to, push it and, try to help on this thing. So no, good for you. That's great. Mike, do you have another question?
It's really interesting seeing how sort of TELUS Ag has sort of started up within sort of the whole TELUS infrastructure. And can you just talk a little bit about how you've seen things change? You were employee number 3 in the new division in a huge company. And now that division's grown extremely fast over the last few years. Can you just talk a little bit about those changes?
Yeah, I mean, the nice thing about TELUS Ag, it always had support from the execs. Like there really was a real strong push there, right? So that was always exciting to see that kind of momentum behind it. And when you get that kind of momentum from a company like TELUS, that's what drives things, right? And that's what drives things fast. And then they had the experience to do this in the past, so you got things moving. I guess the way I'm characterizing it right now, chapter 1 has kind of been, get the business unit up and running has been completed. It's not like we're still going to grow, but chapter 2 is now bringing them together. So we have been a collection of brands. We're now going to be moving into a branded house. And so, when we hired or when we acquired these companies, we also acquired the people. And so, I would say that we have some really strong leadership now coming in from the acquisitions, from both the TKXS and Agrian and from the Excedra acquisitions. And they're going to bring a little bit more of a flavor to it that is really ag-centric, right? With the best of both worlds. And so that I'm finding kind of exciting because it is interesting because these leaders, honestly, and I didn't know this when I wasn't too sure about this when I got into it, right? Like I knew we were going to acquire companies. I wasn't too sure if when we acquired the company, the individuals we acquired were there to honestly get the big paycheck and move on or continue the vision. But almost everybody came in because they liked the vision. And so I am seeing a lot of passion, to be honest, from the leadership that we have at TELUS Ag to continue to drive that. Now, one of the gentlemen, the CEO from Agrian, he's now head of agribusiness. Honestly, I can get that guy on a call at 5 a.m. or 4 a.m. Well, 4:30, I think, is his limit, is what I've learned, for a call in the UK. And also, he will be on that call at 10 o'clock. And I will see that same passion throughout it. So we are definitely going to be a lot more ag-centric in the world of TELUS Ag, but I do expect to see significant change as we come in together as TELUS Ag. And so there will be a nice blend of Agnes and telco.
Yeah, this is a great story that's sort of popped up. And I think, we look forward to hearing more about sort of TELUS Ag in the future. Before we head out, is there anything else you'd want our listeners to know about?
No, I think if you're interested in agriculture, you're interested in technology, I think this is an extremely interesting time to be in agriculture. If you're looking for where the world is changing to, this is definitely a sector that's going to drive it, right? So if you're interested in satellite technology and soil science and food, it combines all those things that I knew about the equipment I used to drive as a kid to the chemistry and seed that I worked at back in my days at Syngenta. So it is an exciting time.
If people want to learn more about TELUS Ag or connect with you, how can they do that?
They're welcome. So we've got the website up. You just go to the TELUS. There's a section all on TELUS Ag. They can easily go on there and take a look at all the various acquisitions and services we have. If they want to get a hold of me, they're more than welcome to reach out with me on LinkedIn, or I'm not too sure how far this will go. If I should put my phone number and email address or not. Probably not. Yeah. So, but they're more than welcome to reach out to me from a LinkedIn perspective and any other way.
Perfect.
I don't think we'll get you thousands and thousands of new followers, but LinkedIn works for most people. So
yeah.
No, that's great. I really appreciate you sharing this morning, Todd, and it's great to catch up. And congratulations on all your progress, and really proud of your leadership on helping TELUS be successful in agriculture. And know they're going to be a big player and very influential, helping us grow more food and feed the world. So good for you. Congratulations.
Thanks, Joe. It's always a pleasure. And Mike, it was very nice meeting you as well.
Very nice to meet you as well. And I just wanted to thank our listeners for tuning into the Ready, Set, Grow podcast. You can find us at our website, rhaccelerator.com, YouTube, or your favorite podcasting platform. And I just wanted to thank you again, Todd, for joining us.
It was my pleasure. Thank you.